false start. So they're racing now. You're all
Often
watching.
racing.
They're racing now. So you're watching the Get Busy Livin podcast, and I'm Dr. Scott Fox, registered acupuncturist in the north of Brisbane, and we have a lovely guest this morning. Thank you so much for your time, Lynn Kendall. Much appreciated that you've come on this morning and just give us some gold.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's always great to be able to chat to so many people about what we're passionate about. So thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, and thank you. You've got some great insights, very important information. I love talking to you about what you do, and much appreciated that you've come to, as I said, to explain what you do. So I'm going to kick it off with our first question. So tell us, Lynn, what gets you out of bed every morning?
Children get me out of bed every morning. Not literally, though, because now I'm a grandparent. So, my children have all grown up now. Literally, they used to get me out of bed in the morning. But now I still get up because I love teaching the next generation. So children still get me out of bed. Like, I'm at retirement age and they're still getting me out of bed virtually now rather than physically. But yeah, children and the next generation, because I believe it's our job in this generation to get the next generation ready for their generation. And I've got no clues what that's going to look like, sound like, and feel like for them. But if we can teach them all about themselves, then they can pivot in any direction that they need to go to for their generation. So that gets me out of bed every morning.
That's pretty cool, because the next generation are our future, and I think if everyone thought that way, including our leaders, well, we would actually be in a better situation. But that because they are the dreams that are coming. They are the new way of living, and you're very true. And this is what we're all about. Yeah, we're all about healthy communities, and the next generation are so vital in maintaining that as well, and also creating it.
Yeah, and my mantra is empowering generations, empowering lives one step at a time. And I tell my generational story. When my parents were growing up, they actually learned all the knowledge they needed on the farm in the jobs that they were actually doing. When I went to school, I sat on long wooden benches, wrote with inkwells. When my kids went to school, they wrote with pens and paper, had individual desks. When my grandkids went to school, they took an iPad and had flexible learning environments. I've got no clues what the next generation's even going to look like. But one thing I want them to take to school on their first day is knowing who they are, because then they can pivot. It doesn't matter whether they can't even imagine what technology or what they are going to take physically in their backpack to school. But if they actually understand themselves, that's what they need to know on how to pivot and be ready for their first day of school.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, that's and the other thing is things have changed what we eat as well when we were kids in comparison to what they eat now. It's very, very different.
Yeah.
I've noticed that change very big time, and also the curriculum has changed a lot too as well.
Huge. I mean, it just blows my mind how fast and how much faster things are actually becoming. I could sort of see that transition from my parents' time into my time. And then went, okay, we sort of pasted, I think, quite nicely there. And then we sort of pasted quite nicely, I think, between my time and coming into my children's time. But oh my gosh, now the speed of things is just getting faster and faster and faster and faster because we're creating so much more, which is really awesome. That we know we've got innovative minds, we're creating some amazing things for the society in which we live. But with all that fastness, it's just incredibly interesting to sit back and watch, because the curriculum has moved exceptionally fast on our poor little children, particularly in prep, because I'm early childhood trained. And oh my gosh, what we used to teach in early childhood back in my day, so I love being able to use that quote now. I hated it when my mum said it. Now I'm at this end of my age ago. Back in my day, I love the quote. But back in my day, yeah, we, you know, it was so much slower, but we were teaching them foundational skills so much more explicitly at that point in time, and ensuring that they had the foundational skills to be able to move on. Now they enter prep and they need to know just so much more. And I'm just seeing so many more children become lost in that process because, our brains are amazing things, but, it can still only remember so many things. And we don't have those foundational skills to build on. Therefore, then those, it's like building a house. If you don't have that solid foundation, there are going to be cracks in the walls and the windows and all sorts of interesting things happening, So it's really important to get those foundations in for our young people, in terms of their learning and what's happening for them. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
So thank you.
Oh, you're right.
So we're actually sort of moving into the next question. So
Yeah.
that's good. So basically, I see on your profile that you're resilience tutor, founder of
Yep.
Tommy Academy,
Yep.
resilience tutoring for families and teachers, working in the education and psychology field, empowering young people to face life's challenges with confidence.
Yeah.
So tell us how you got into that.
How did I get into that? Yeah, how did I get into that big title? A long story. Where will I start? Well, I've always been a natural. Yeah,
I told you it'd take all day.
yeah, yeah. I've always been a natural teacher, so I've moved into teaching because I just love teaching kids. So I became an early childhood teacher first, and then taught in the early childhood sector. Really love seeing our young people learn and understand the concepts that we were teaching them. But then as we moved through those teaching years, what I actually found was that students weren't keeping up with the curriculum. We were seeing behaviors happening. So what I decided to do at that point in time was go and study psychology. So I did teaching first and loved it, but knew that I needed something more. To become a better teacher, but also to help our young people more. I also by this stage had my own children. I have one girl, three boys, and one of my children had learning difficulties, had learning struggles. So what I did was study psychology. And then what I actually found, because psychology is the study of human behavior, which I totally, totally love. Teachers explicitly teach the skills that children need. So I started studying psychology because I really wanted to understand the struggle of our young people even more so. So when I was studying psychology, I then got into the neuroscience aspect of psychology. So really understanding what our brain and our body is doing. Because when I really stopped and looked at the struggle with our young people, I thought, what is this struggle all about? And this struggle was all about children not knowing who they were. And I went, aha. And when I first became a psychologist, I went, this is a bit of a silly profession I've got myself into, because I actually have to wait. I got in there because I wanted to help young children. But then I realized I actually had to wait for them to have negative life experiences and more than one of them before they would come and see me. And then my job was to unravel that. I went, this isn't making much sense to me. So putting my teaching hat on, I created programs to help them understand who they were, understand how their brain and their body acted or reacted to different life experiences. When I started teaching young people all about themselves, all about how their brain acted, all about how their body was acting, all about their nervous system, you could see the light bulbs come on and go, that's what's happening for me. Because some of our young people who were having these behaviors, they actually didn't know how that was actually happening. The behavior actually surprised them. They go, how did I end up in the principal's office? And you could see that genuine surprise, and the principal sitting there going, and what were you doing today? And I'm sure that poor little Vegemite at some point wanted to say, I actually don't know. And he would have been totally right, because he wasn't understanding the actions and the reactions of what was actually happening for him. So I went back and studied extensively because I really wanted to understand what behavior actually was for our young people, because I was seeing some interesting behaviors. And I just wanted to help our young people. As parents, when we see our young people in an emotional distress, We just want to take their emotions away from them because we don't like to see them in that distress, So sometimes we just mention some things, go, let me take on your emotions because I really want to help you out here. What we need to do is let them have their own emotions, don't get me wrong. But I was the same when I was working in schools. So I worked in schools as a guidance officer and to deputy principal for a long period of time. So my job was to help young people understand their behavior or understand how to put strategies in there or teach teachers strategies to work with young people's behavior. So I was so excited when I got the opportunity to blend psychology and teaching together. So now we understand behavior very differently. So now I write behavior up on the board and I cross it out and I write the word emotions. Now I cross that out and go unregulated nervous system, because that's actually what's happening for our young people. Our young people actually have an unregulated nervous system, not unregulated behavior, not unregulated emotions, but an unregulated nervous system. So now we teach our young people to tune in and tune up their nervous system so it's ready for any experience that they're going to come along at the end of the day. And when I was teaching emotions, because it was interesting to watch some of our young people come into schools and they'd go, I'm really angry. And I'm going, oh, that looks like frustration or sadness to me. It doesn't look like anger at all. Because we went through the era of naming emotions for our young people, we were actually guesstimating. We were just having a good old guess that they could have been feeling frustrated or angry because that's what we feel like they were doing. And we'd go, I'm noticing you're really angry at the present moment. And sometimes you would have got the reaction back, no, I'm not. Oh, I got it wrong. Are you feeling frustrated then? So because what emotions actually is an action or a reaction to the experience in which they're having. It is also energy, emotion within their body. So when you teach children about their body and you teach them about the energy in their body, and you teach them that the energy needs to move through their body and out the other side, then they go, oh, is that what emotions are? I go, yeah, it's energy in the body. So by teaching what's actually happening for our young people in their body and getting them connected back into their body, and then the connection between the brain and the body, because we've got the vagus nerve, which of course goes from the tip of our ear right down to our um, right through our body, and that's that mind-body connection, comes in through the vestibular system. So when we actually understand the
Yeah, the spine.
neuroscience of, the spine,
Through the
what's
spine.
that? Yeah, what's actually happening in that neuroscience perspective and teaching children about that, then they go, oh, I understand actually what's actually happening within my body. And I use the language of neuroscience, as I call it. When I have a young child who says to me, I'm anxious, I cross out the word I and put, is your body, and depends what the situation is your body anxious or is your brain anxious? Because I'm not anxious. I'm the most amazing person in the whole entire world. So, but the body will be anxious, and the body could be anxious because it hasn't got enough oxygen to the brain. Because when we breathe from our chest, we don't have enough oxygen, cuts off the oxygen supply to our brain. Our brain goes, I've got no clue what you want me to do. So your brain becomes anxious at that point in time. Anyway, teaching young people about how their brain and body work, then they can link that to what's actually happening for them. And of course, talking about the different parts of the nervous system and the flight, fright, freeze, all of those types of mechanisms that can be activated along the way. They actually know what's happening for them at that point in time. So that's what I get passionate about, is teaching young people all about who they are and also all about their brain and body at the same point in time. So that's why I have created the Resilience Tutor, because, yep, I could have sailed off onto the sunset by now, on the boat and gone, okay, I'm all good to go. I've done everything I need to do for this society. And I went, nah, I'm really passionate about teaching young people about who they are, because, as I said, it's our responsibility to get this generation ready for their next generation. I can't even envision what that could even look like anymore. My memory and my dreaming stages can't even get me there anymore. I can't visualize it. So I just want to get them ready as much as I can in this lifetime, and then, see the Resilience Tutor continue past my lifetime, and then, teach our young people who they are and what they need to know for theirs.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's exciting work,
Whoa.
right?
So yeah, so that's very interesting that you have taken it to another level. So you're
Yep.
basically saying that the current what was it? Evaluation, well, medical evaluation is limited to what um it was old school. It's old curriculum.
Yeah.
So the new way you believe that the new way is to break it down to a neurological issue, and then that will explain the emotion. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, basically, if your nervous system is tuned in, and there's like as you all know, there's a whole science that sits behind this, and I talk about our body as an ecosystem. It's a pity I haven't got my slideshow up, but but then we could be here for 3 hours, so it's a good thing it's not.
Yeah.
I talk about our body being an ecosystem because technically it is. So
Yep.
we need the right amount of food and water. We need the right
Yes.
amount of exercise. We need the
Yep.
right amount of sunshine. We need all of those variables to be right. And it's interesting because even when I was studying, like we all need food and water, but we all need different amounts of food and water for our ecosystem to be actually working in its full capacity. But so if we actually understand and tune in our nervous system, then their behavior, like we're at our optimal performance. It's like I use the car analogy. If you put petrol in the car, your car's going to take you X amount of kilometers and do a happy little job at it. It's going to do a reasonably good job. But if you do that for a long period of time without servicing it, without changing the spark plugs, and I know that's not a thing in these days motors, but whatever you do to this day and age motor, you know, if you don't service it, plug it
Wow.
into the if you don't plug it into the wall anymore to service it,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. If you don't service the car, it's not going to give you the longevity and get you to the destinations for the next 10 or 20 years. We've got an old Land Cruiser and it's still going exceptionally well because we have kept it serviced, so it's happily motoring along as if it's a new little Land Cruiser, and it thinks it is, so we're all good to go. Same with our bodies. If
Yeah.
we actually service our body in the way that it needs to be serviced and we're putting the right amount of fuel into our body, therefore then our nervous system will be at its optimal performance and will be able to do the job that it needs to do. If our body is not running at its optimal performance, yeah, that's when we're then going to get all of these actions and reactions in different ways that link to our behavior. So I've seen children now with beautifully regulated nervous systems, and this is all based on polyvagal theory, Dr. Stephen Porges' work as well. So if you want to delve into this deeper, or contact me because I can talk about it forever. But if we actually have a regulated nervous system, emotions, and we can understand our emotions, an experience will come in. And then because we have a regulated nervous system, we'll be able to act and react in an appropriate way. We'll still have emotions because we're human beings and that's what human beings do. But we'll be able to manage those emotions in relation to the experience that is happening for us. So that's where it's really exciting that if we have our body and our nervous system tuned in, then we'll be able to handle those emotions so much more differently for us. And once again, tuning out the nervous system is a large process because, and I've got my little pyramid of learning, because we take information in through our senses. So if our senses are overloaded and overwhelmed, so every time I work with a young person, the first thing I do is a sensory profile. I need to know if your senses are overloaded or running at capacity, or not running at capacity, are underdeveloped. I need to know whether your vestibular system is underdeveloped or overdeveloped. So once we tune in the whole entire ecosystem, then your body is running at optimal performance. You will then act or react appropriately to the experiences that you're having in life. Everything in life starts with an experience. So that's where we try and teach emotions through emoji faces, emoji faces, and I'm going, how does that actually work? Because you, like it's like your times tables. Yeah, I can put up an emoji face and go anger, or I can put up an emoji face and go happiness. I can put up an emoji face and go excited. You know, But there's no point in teaching it that way, because every emotion that we have actually starts with the experience. So what we actually need to do is teach in context, not out of context, um, at that part of it as well. But if we actually understand the energy in our body at the same time, and I teach three energies: high energy, centered energy, and low energy. Our young people are actually um, their body is in high energy. Their body hasn't learned yet. Notice I use the language of body. Their body hasn't learned yet to go from high energy to centered energy to low energy, centered energy to high energy, and backwards and forwards all day. Now, that is what your body is meant to be doing. It's meant to be regulating the energy. Notice I use the word regulating there. Regulating the energy all day long. If your body can appropriately regulate the energy in the body as it needs to for the job and experience that it needs to be doing at that point in time, then it's also your emotions. You're acting and reacting in an appropriate way to those experiences. So, and the boys love playing, well, everybody loves playing the energy games because they're fun, and I teach them every energy has a purpose. So, for example, and both negatively and positively as well. So, basically, if you're on the basketball court, your body needs to be in high energy, because if it's in low energy, it's not doing the job it needs. And when children have trouble going to sleep and they're in high energy, what we actually need to do is actually bring them back down from high energy first back to centered energy back to low energy. We can't expect them to go from high energy and drop to low energy. We will see behavior in the middle, because the body goes, oh my gosh, you want me to do all that work? You don't want me to come down nice and slowly? So he goes, I'll have a conniption. If you want me to go from high energy to low energy, bedtime tantrums are going to happen for you. But if we actually bring them down through experiences, different ways of doing it, into that centered energy, they actually recognize that we actually use the language of high energy, centered energy, and low energy. They recognize they're in centered energy, then we can get them to go to low energy peacefully, off to sleep, just amazingly, and for the whole entire night. Because the only reason why children, I don't know how I'm getting onto this topic, but anyway, the only reason why children don't sleep at night is because their ecosystem is not aligned. There is something missing. It could be that their body is dehydrated. There is an element that is missing there for them. And that is why their body is unable to sustain sleep for a long period of time as well. And there can also be safety and connection, but we're not going to go there because,
So yeah. I was just going to go back. We're going to go
yeah.
back about, I think, about 10 steps.
Yeah.
About 10. I think it was about 10. So how do you get to a conclusion or I don't want to use the word diagnosis for what's going on with the child? How do you
In
work that
terms
out?
of the nervous system,
Yeah.
we do a lot of assessments. So a lot of observations, a lot of assessments. So as I said, we do a sensory profile. We check for the level of safety and connection within their body as well, because and where they're actually anchoring that safety and connection. Because as I said, for children who are in high energy, they've actually connected, they've actually anchored safety to high energy. So if they're in high energy all the time, their body actually feels safe. And our body's job and our unconscious mind's job and our brain's job is to keep us safe. So if it doesn't feel like it's doing its job of safety, that's also when, or the children don't feel like, or the nervous system doesn't feel like it's safe, or the body doesn't feel like it's safe, therefore
Mm.
then it will go into a behavioral response. So there's a lot of assessments that go with this process, and it's quite in depth, so that way we can actually understand what's actually happening for the ecosystem of the child, of the body, at that point in time. So yes, lots of observations, lots of assessments. We have a pyramid of learning that we go through. We check the gross motor, we check your fine motor, we check how your body is actually developing. And that's what the job of early childhood teachers are. We love development because that's what we're taught. We sit there and watch babies develop, into toddlers, and then toddlers into bigger people, and then bigger people into bigger people. But, we've really got to track the development of what's actually happening within the body and the brain at that point in time. So, yeah, we do a lot of assessments, a lot of observations to actually understand what is actually happening for your body in that space.
Okay. So, what was I going to say? So, we've talked about this before. So you see a lot of autism it's not
Yep,
something that you look for, but it seems to come to you a lot. Yeah,
yep,
is that
yep.
right?
Their body is very different, and their brain is very different. Like so, and I mean, every child is different. Again, I mean, identical twins, two identical twins are not actually identical, but what's actually happening for them? Their personality is different. Their ecosystem is actually different. But what's actually happened is when they were being born, their brain actually has a mirror image because we have mirror neurons in our brain. So they've been able to they have more mirror neurons, so they've all the same mirror neurons as each other, so they can have that mirror image. Children who are experiencing ASD, they have less mirror neurons in their brains, so they can't actually read because the job of the mirror neurons in the brain is to read and understand other people. They don't actually have as many mirror neurons that we actually have. So therefore, then we can teach them differently in terms of what's actually happening on how to do that without having those mirror neurons. So once again, the ecosystem is built differently. So therefore, then what we do is we work with their ecosystem as it's presenting itself, and their senses are highly differently tuned in to our senses. So that's why when we work with young people who have a high sensory overload, we really need to understand what that sensory overload is. And they'll either have high sensory overloads or they'll have low sensory overloads, or some senses actually don't work. So, once again, different for each and every child. But once again, when we go through and we understand the ecosystem of what's happening in that young person's body, in the young person's brain, then they're in the exact same place. They can actually they tune in their nervous system. Their nervous system is then highly optimal. Their ecosystem is developed in the way that it needs to be. So they're acting and reacting to the experiences that they need to in an appropriate way. So and we're that's the I mean that's the beauty of being a human, right? That we're all entirely different. We're not all meant to be the same, but for some reason we've gone down this labeling process that says you're this or you're that. Well, actually, your ecosystem in your body is just different. You just have either a high level of senses. You have your brain is composed differently for whatever particular reason. And I talk about conservation of energy because we really only do have so much energy within our body. We can create energy outside of our body, and I'm not going to go down on that topic today. But conservation of energy. I was working with a young person who was 16 years of age, had an accident at 16 years of age, beautiful normal development, okay, was doing awesome, had this accident, didn't affect his brain because his accident was on his hand, okay, so he hurt his hand, a lot of pain. He stopped talking, and he had all the doctors baffled, no longer talking, and nobody could come up with an explanation. Conservation of energy. The brain goes, I've only got so much. I actually have to send all of my energy to fixing the pain in the hand.
To the
The
hand.
pain in the hand was so intense. The language center clocked out. So because language center last to develop, first one that will clock out. And when I explain conservation of energy, when I'm studying my doctorate and I'm sitting here writing for long periods of time and my brain is in overload, writing, I'm getting all my ideas down, my digestion system stops. Once again, conservation of energy. So, our conservation of our energy. So, if we've got an overstimulated sensory system, where's the energy? Where's the energy in the body going to be directed to? So, therefore, other parts of the brain or other parts of your ecosystem is not working as effectively because I've got to send all my energy into being able to regulate these senses. So, therefore, I might not be able to have the words to exactly explain to you right round about now because I'm busy trying to bring my senses into alignment And therefore, then I can't also now talk to you about whatever it is that you want to talk to me about the same amount of time. If only our body could talk to us, life would be easier. Hang on, I'm working on developing, my nervous system right about now. I'm working on trying to feel safe and connected so my flight fright freeze act doesn't get activated.
Yeah.
There is so much information in this world and our environment that we need to take in and process. Now, as I said earlier, our learning, and as you said earlier, our learning and our environments are getting busier, 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 busier. Therefore, our body or our nervous system or our little ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, is going to get busier and busier and busier and busier. So unless we learn to tune it up and really refine our ecosystem, it's not going to keep up. There's nowhere in the world it's going to keep up because it is a limited resource. So we're going to see more, which is because, I often get this question: how can we see more behavior in schools now than there were back in the day? I've got two answers for that one. Number one, if school wasn't your thing back in the day, you didn't go.
Yeah.
Government now says we must all attend school, regardless of whether school is our thing or not our thing. But not only that, our ecosystems in our body and our brain can just not keep up with the busyness of what's happening in our classrooms, or cannot keep up with the fast pace of our curriculum. And we're supposed to go back and review and revise. There's nowhere in the world we've got time to do that in 5 hours in a school day with all of the curriculum that they're
Yeah.
actually, why are children learning languages at a young age? Is that something our little brain needs to be really focused on at that point in time? Or is our brain better focused on my gross and fine motor skills because it's not really happening for me at the present moment? I need more practice in that area. So we're not tuning into what our young people need. And if we're not tuning into what our young people need, they are going to act and react in different ways. You're overloading the system. You're overwhelming the system. And if the system is overloaded or overwhelmed, it's got to show its breaking point. How do we show our breaking point as humans? Emotions and behavior.
Yeah. So I'm going to quote something from Albert Einstein, actually.
Oh, I love
So he
Albert
said,
Einstein.
if you want your children to be intelligent, read them
Yep.
fairy tales.
Yeah,
Read them
use
fairy
their
tales.
imagination. Oh, I
Yeah.
should have had my slides up. Joe Dispenza says if you've already thought of the experience neurochemically, it's the same. So therefore, if I think I've been to Bali and I know enough information about Bali, the brain actually thinks I've been to Bali. How cool is that? Saved on the FFID. I haven't had the physical experience. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but neurochemically, it's the same. So the brain thinks it's been to Bali. I've been, but yeah, exactly the same. Albert Einstein. We dream it.
And then he goes on to say, if you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales.
Yeah, clever. Yep, that's exactly right.
He had some crazy statements, but yeah, I know in Chinese medicine in the old days they don't do it so much these days, only in certain circles. But if they wanted to learn about a formula,
Yeah.
a herbal formula, they would write a fairy tale about the formula.
There you go.
But then they could learn it.
Yeah.
So
Clever.
when they had so instead of having a book with all these indications of the formula,
Yeah.
what they do is they turn it into a rhyme.
There you go. And
So
our brain learns in different ways.
yeah, so that they knew that thousands of years ago. And they're
Yeah.
actually the and if you're part of a family that was herbalist, they would give you those books early. They would give them to you
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 years of age, so
Yeah.
you'd start to learn the formulas off by heart. So then you'd know. So and that's my teacher. She said that her father, he was in a dairy farm. So while he was herding the cows up, he'd be singing the songs to himself, the
Yeah,
rhymes to himself.
clever. Yeah. And see,
So they knew all these formulas.
some of those things to actually help the brain relax. So it's not actually thinking about the scientificness of the formula. because if you're actually doing it as a fairy tale, the brain has a different way of processing that. And because it goes, oh, fairy tales means I'm going to relax. Neurochemically, it's exactly the same. So, and one of the things that we check for our young people to assess whether their nervous system is in tune or not in tune is their relaxation reflex. Because if you can bring your body back to a nice, beautiful relaxation process at any point in time, 9 times out of 10, your nervous system is going to be nicely tuned up. And it's interesting watching the extremities, your fingers and your toes, you go, oh, he's not doing a bad job of it. And then you look at the fingers and all the toes are curled up like this, going, sorry, next, um,
Yeah.
relaxation is, and that's why we love play as in early childhood, because play is a form of relaxation. It gives the brain time to relax, to be able to process more different information. Aha moments. I sit down and go into childcare centres all the time and sit down and play, particularly if I'm trying to solve a problem. I go to play all the time because it's the body's way of relaxation, and your brain automatically gets into this whole play space or this younger space, and it frees it up, and you go, oh, that's what it is that I needed to work. That's what I need to do to solve this problem. So we've got to put our body into stages of relaxation to be able to unclutter it, and that's what they would have been doing, which is very clever. I love that.
Yeah. So, where do we go from here? Um, so tell me, give me some more patients that you've seen and you've helped with their issues, their emotional issues.
There's been a lot
Well,
a lot
I
of
should say neurological issues.
neuro ecosystem issues.
Yeah, ecosystem. There you go, ecosystem. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I'll do a few new terminologies here of way of speaking, or explaining what's actually happening. So basically, yeah, I get to work a lot with children who have ASD, the ADHD population as well, because their body is wired quite differently. Children who have selective mutism, I love working with those populations, a little bit like the one that I just explained. Conservation of energy for them is very, very differently, and we assume that sometimes it's fear based. It's a fear of being in a social situation. Now, sometimes that's exactly what it is, but not always. Sometimes it's, once again, conservation of energy within our body. The language center is unable to effectively operate in a social environment or a different environment because the senses often, and it's often the senses that are doing it, but not always, often the senses are overloaded. So it's sending conservation of energy. I'm sending all my energy to my senses, so I can't put this experience into words. I can't use my language center at that point in time. So it's interesting that you often hear, oh, they're scared of talking. It's more than the fear of talking. Type stuff, or they're scared of being in this in a social environment. They don't like to be near the sand or whatever it is. We talk about it from a fear-based rather than understanding what's actually happening in that ecosystem in the body. And as I said, it's often the senses or another part of the body that's not tuned in at that point in time, and therefore then they can't access the language center at that point in time. So, and what we actually do through, and part of the process of what I actually do is, because we also work and understand the vestibular system. So we do a lot of balance activities, because balance creates stability, stability creates safety. Safety creates connection. And the one things that we're always looking for, our body's always assessing for, our brain is always assessing for, is safety and connection. If we feel like we are safe, or we feel like we've got connection, therefore then our body is happy to operate in the environment that it's in. If we don't feel like we've got a sense of safety or connection, then the body goes into overdrive, because that's what it's looking for. And that's where I love the ADHD population, because they put their sense of safety to high energy. That's where their anchor point is. And once again, when you look at the nervous system, they're the sympathetic nervous system, flight, fright. Their body needs to be in flight in mode ready for flight and fright in case it's going to happen. Some are actually predictable. So your ADHD children, I haven't come across one yet that where they're freeze they're in the freeze mechanism. So their fear response, when it gets activated, goes into freeze. That's me. I freeze all the time. And when I used to work in schools, I'd say, okay, my fear response is freeze. So which means I'm just going to stop. If you're flight fright, fantastic. Off you go, leave me alone. I'll catch up when I'm ready. But my system's going to recover. It's going to get itself out of that. And that's called dorsal vagal. And what we want to, when you study the nervous system, you've got your dorsal vagal, your sympathetic, and your ventral vagal. Where we want to be is ventral vagal. And I'll say, it's okay, because when I get out of dorsal vagal or when I get out of freeze, my body will catch up and then I'll be in front of you. So we're all good to go. But, it's really important to understand what your fear responses are for your children. Is it freeze? Is it flight or fright, or is it fawn? Fawn's a new one that's been in, I think it's only been around about 2 or 3 years. They're the children that pretend that everything is all good. There could be a whole pile of things happening around them. Dissociation comes in beautifully. A whole pile of things come in around them and they're not there. I'm okay. I'm really good. Nothing's happening for me. Took me a long time. When I was studying, I came across this little girl. I'll never forget her as long as I live, because they kept saying she's fawning. I'm going, I'm not so sure about that. So I went down and did my observations, and she was the first little one that I went, oh my gosh, she actually is doing that. So she wasn't actually in freeze. She wasn't in flight or fright, but when she was in it, and they're hard to pick up. ASD girls are very good at fawn, and ASD girls are really hard to diagnose because they mask a lot of their behaviors. A lot of children, another population I get to work with a lot is the children that appear normal all day long. Their ecosystem's not working to its capacity during the day, and they have huge meltdowns when they get home. And then poor mama goes, oh my gosh, I've got this little person who just cannot, who just attacks me the moment they walk in the door. It's like, I take this little cub to school, I come home, and they come home as a lion, ready to eat me.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot. The
Yeah.
children of, I've heard that a lot. That this parents say this to me a lot. They'll say I'll go and talk to their teacher, and their teacher's like, they're fine.
Angels.
They're and then they get home, they act out.
They do,
It's
because
it,
they're busy storing it in their nervous system all day long. They're fawning it. They're pretending that my world is all good to go, but their little internal world is not all good to go. It's really working overtime, big time. And oh my gosh, they're the most interesting little people to work with at times, because they don't have any words to put it. You ask them, and they don't actually have any words to put around that. And it's not until you get to speak to the parents, you go, yep, okay, they're holding this in. They're holding all of their emotions in during the day as well. So therefore, it's like holding your breath. Every time an experience comes along and you can't work it out, you hold your breath. And it just stores. So, and when an experience comes in that our brain can't resolve, or it's overloaded, it stores that experience in the nervous system. And when we get too many stored experiences in the nervous system, overwhelm, the body is in overwhelm. And of course, once again, those children are highly connected to their parents as well, and feel safe with their parents. So sometimes often children do not attach, or your school refuses. Their school refusing because their connection of safety is to home, not to school. You've got to get a connection of safety to school. And so many children don't have, because, it's a huge environment. Sometimes that's where a smaller school environment's better than a larger school environment for some little kidlets, because they can manage to maintain themselves in a smaller school environment. So, school refusing children have an unregulated nervous system, but they actually don't feel safe. So they've connected safety to home or to mum. The ones that we get where we've got an over safety attachment to mum and connection to mum, That way we need to change that safety connection back to an object first. But realistically, the best safety connection we can have is to ourselves. So we need to change safety and connection when it's over attached to mum. And that's not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing either. But we have to, once again, scaffold that back to an object or something else. We're going to attach safety to this now. And then we bring safety back to self. Then we can do safety back to school. So because I study school refusers for ages, because I'm going, oh, this can't be too hard. We'll just, build up a relationship with them, make sure they've got a connection, all of those things. But their body goes in, their ecosystem is so unregulated that it goes into that fear all the time. And of course, what is their fear response? It's often freeze. Where are they freezing?
Yeah.
At home.
Yeah, gotcha.
So
yeah,
once, yeah.
so that it yeah, that is so tell us again those three steps, those the three levels that you were talking about just
Which
like
level?
5 minutes ago. So the second one was fight or flight. What was the first one?
Your flight, fright, freeze, and fawn.
Yeah,
Your fear
yeah.
responses. Yeah.
Yes. So can you say them again, please?
Okay, so we've got so either we're in and it lines to our nervous system. So our dorsal
Yep.
vagal, which is the bottom one, is freeze.
Yeah.
So basically,
Freeze.
when your body feels like it's in threat, or it's fear, or it feels like it's in danger, dorsal vagal will be activated and you'll just go to freeze. You'll be immobilized. Your body won't be able to do anything until it can remake sense of what's actually happening in the world. Then we've got the
Yeah.
sympathetic, which is your flight and fright. So therefore, then sense of danger, sense of not being safe, your body is going to be activated into flight or fright. And you can see that too in those young children who run away from school. They've got an overactive sympathetic nervous system at that point in time because they just need to be out of there. They don't feel safe at school, so that they want to run away. Where we want to be is in ventral vagal. So when we're in ventral vagal, which means that we're in a safe space, we're connected, we can be socially engaged, and we can operate within the environment that we're in. So predominantly, we are in one of those. I've not actually found anybody yet, and I don't know that it's possible, where you can be both in flight or fright at the same time. So knowing your child's response, and young people with selective mutism, theirs often is freeze. They're not flight or fright. They'll become clingy. So their response to when I'm feeling uncertain or threatened in a particular way or in danger is I'm going to freeze and I'm going to cling to mum, because mum is my point of safety and connection. So the body and the brain is always looking for safety and connection.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you so much for explaining that.
You're welcome.
So in adults I see it a lot. I'd probably
Yep.
say one in six Australians have that
Yeah.
fight or flight, stage three
Overactivated.
chronic, stage 3 chronic stress or
Yep.
PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder.
Yep.
I see it a lot, and I can see, and when I speak to them, I'd say probably 90% of the time, it comes back to something that happened to them when they were a child.
Correct.
That's
And that is stored in their nervous system. So,
yeah,
and that experience hasn't been resolved. And in our brain, we have
yeah,
what is called experience loops. So when you have the brain's job is to problem solve. It loves nothing better to be able to problem solve or seek evidence. If I say to you, I'm ADHD, then the brain is going to go looking for evidence of I'm ADHD. If I say to the brain, I'm the best person in the whole entire world, it's going to go looking for evidence of I'm the best person in the whole entire world. If I say to the brain, I have anxiety, the brain's going to go looking for that anxiety, go looking for evidence of that. Now, if it can't problem solve something, it actually, we won't get into the brain components, but because experiences are stored differently in the brain, depending on part of the experience. But generally, we have what is
yeah,
called an experience loop in our brain. So when the brain can't solve a problem, and then it says to the nervous system, oh, I can't solve this problem right now. Can you store it for me for a little while? And it goes, yeah, sure, no problem. So it stores it stores it in the nervous system. Brain has another experience, goes, oh, I can't problem solve this one either. Can you store it in the nervous system for me for a little while? Goes, yeah, okay, I can do that. And that keeps happening. When the brain can't keep resolving it, and at the same time all these experience loops are left open because the brain is unable to resolve the experience that this young person or this person has had, that's when the brain becomes overwhelmed because it goes, I've got no clues. I can't work out what's actually happened to me. And then all of those experiences are stored in the nervous system as well. And when there's too many of that, once again, the nervous system goes, I give in. I can't keep going either. So that's where then the body, that's the post-traumatic stress. My dad had post-traumatic stress when he was 80 because he had a heart attack and they revived him from a heart attack. And so his body kept thinking it was going to have another heart attack, because he had been revived from that. So he ended up having post-traumatic stress, his body. And once again, he didn't have it. I take my words back. His body had post-traumatic stress because it was waiting for his heart to stop beating. So what I did was, number one, reset his nervous system. And this is when I was very first learning, because he's been passed away for quite some time now. But this is when I was very first learning, because oxygen plays a huge part in this part of the process, because basically the body and the brain needs enough oxygen to be able to understand, to be able to operate at its fullest capacity. So I taught him how to get that oxygen through his body all the time. And then I also then reset his nervous system, and we were able to clear that understanding that my heart was going to stop, and he didn't have post-traumatic stress disorder when he passed away. But it took us quite some time. It's not a magic quick fix. Nothing is in this lifetime. But oh my gosh, if you actually understand what's actually happening in your body and your brain and how it acts and reacts to the different experiences that we have, where they're stored in the brain and where they're stored in the body, then we can start clearing them. Then we can start moving through and understanding what's happening for us. And you know what? It's just a nice way to have a different conversation around what's happening for you. And that's what I love about it, and that's what our young people love about it. I'm actually having a different conversation about what's happening for you. I'm not going into a blame situation. I'm not putting the unconscious mind into defense, because I'm not going into blame. I'm not saying, oh my gosh, your behavior was so bad. How come you can't regulate your emotions? They're not helpful conversations. At all. I'm not going to get a good response from that. But if I'm talking to you about, oh my gosh, I'm just noticing your nervous system needs to be tuned up at the present moment, or oh my god, and using language explicitly, so we get children to talk about their nervous system, their dorsal vagal, their ventral vagal, the dendrites in the brain, so neural pathways. We do a whole pile of stuff around that. So we use all the autonomically correct words for what's actually happening in your body. We get children now to say, when they understand their senses, depends what it is. My auditory sense is overloaded at the present moment. I mean, here's another topic I could talk about for the next 25 years is the sensory rooms in schools. We all thought sensory rooms in schools was a great idea. A lot of research came out around the effectiveness of sensory rooms in schools. But if you didn't actually have a sensory profile on that child, sensory rooms in schools were the biggest disaster area in the whole entire world. Why? Because if your auditory sense is overloaded, and we have a primary sense, the rest are really secondary senses. If your auditory sense is the sense that is overloaded, and I put you into an overstimulating environment what did I say, auditory?
Yeah.
Auditory sense. If your auditory sense is overloaded and I put you into a loud environment, I'm overstimulating that sense. So what you actually have to do is close off that sense. Noise cancelling headphones these days are awesome. But I need to close off this sense, and I need to use my visual sense or my kinesthetic sense. If my visual sense is the one that's overloaded, I need you to close your eyes, and you need to go to hearing, or you need to go to touch. You need to learn to relax your senses in different ways. So when we teach young children, depends what their sensory profile is, I actually teach them to individually relax each sense consciously every day. So what I'm going to do now is, what we're doing now is we are relaxing our visual sense. What we're doing now is we are relaxing our auditory sense, so that way they get the understanding that their sense, and that's one way of regulating your senses and your nervous system. I mean, I could just talk about it all day long.
So yeah, I was going to say that's the easiest 55 minutes I think I've ever done on this podcast. I was just going to say we're going to go to the last question because we're running out of time.
Yep.
So what rules or ideas would you go by to attain lifelong longevity? Please, Ben.
What rules would I live by?
Or ideas, yeah.
Ideas: tune up your nervous system. That's probably the quickest one I could actually answer, because that's it.
Yeah.
Know your body, know your ecosystem. As I said earlier, our bodies all need different levels. Like, our body is science. Look at your body from a scientific viewpoint. So therefore, our body all needs different amounts of food. It needs different amount of water. It needs different amount of exercise. We definitely need to ensure that our body has got enough oxygen, and we actually need to explicitly teach how to diaphragmatic breathe. Once again, conservation of energy. If our body is busy doing different things and taking in environmental information, our diaphragm is actually one thing that clocks out all the time. Goes, I don't need to sleep around about now. I can have a nap now because they're busy working on my senses, or they're busy working on my nervous system. So I'm just going to have a nap, and just hopefully nobody notices. But it will clock out. So unless we teach our body explicitly from a young age to use that diaphragm and get that diaphragm fully activated, because of course its job is to get the oxygen happening through our body. We also get oxygen in our body through water. It oxygenates and keeps our body hydrated.
Hydration, and hydration and oxygenated.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got to wrap it up. I'm so sorry, Lynn. That's been
told you could talk about it all day.
That was awesome. That was fantastic. Could you leave your details on my 3 platforms so people can get in contact with you if they want to know more about what you do?
Awesome.
And that was gold. Like I said before, I said at the start, you're going to drop some gold nuggets today. I think you dropped the goose's eggs. I think the golden goose.
Nice. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated. So you've been watching the Get Busy Livin podcast. Thank you so much, Lynn. Have a great day, guys.
All right. Cheers. Bye.